that represents your energy levels. Can be a laughing emoji. Oh, nice. Somebody's angry. All right. Nice, nice. You guys are the best. Already starting at a high. Hope we maintain the engagement throughout the webinar. Please type in the chat box where you are joining us from. Nice to recognize you. For those who are joining now, react with an emoji that represents your energy levels right now. React with an emoji that represents your energy levels now. Hey, so we are live. Welcome to this webinar. You can drop any questions you have in the chat as we go, and we'll take them as many as we can throughout the session. So before I introduce our guest today, let me start with two numbers from the 2024 FinAccess Household Survey. This includes Central Bank, KNBS, and FSD Kenya. Number one, 84.8% of Kenyans now have access to formal financial services, higher than it has ever been before. My second number, 18% of Kenyans are financially healthy. So it means we have solved access. Everyone has an account, a wallet, a SACCO, a loan app, and still only 1 in 5 of us can manage the month, absorb any shock, and invest in their future. One more, this is quite intriguing. Nearly 4 in 10 Kenyans were investing long-term in 2021. Fast forward to 2024, fewer than 2 in 10, according to the survey. So even the employed are now using savings and credit to get through the month, not to build anything. That's the gap this session is all about. Not earning more, turning what already you are making into something that grows. To introduce the two speakers, they are going to help us close the gap. Linus Njuguna is going to make us measure, because you can't grow what you can't see. Brian is going to make us act on the two decisions that make or break most salaried people, that is borrowing and investing. And here is the one question I'd like you to hold throughout this session, because both of them are going to keep coming back. Is this financial decision moving me towards what I'm trying to, where I'm trying to go, or is it just moving my money around? Linus, over to you.
Right. Good afternoon. I'm excited to all of us here, to seeing all of us here, and we are hoping to have a lead session. I hope all of you can hear me loud and clear. Thumbs up if you can hear me loud and clear. Thumbs up if you're packed up for our discussion this afternoon. So my name is Linus. I have been in the banking and financial services industry over the last 7 years, whether from an audit perspective or actually serving the people on the front line in the financial services space. And we are looking forward to share and discuss around the wealth creation journey. Yeah, so Anthony, should I just jump right into your question, or Brian is introducing himself?
Brian, you can introduce yourself.
Great. I hope everyone can hear me okay. My name is Brian Boro. I'm in the product team. I manage financial services for Workpay, but before that, I have been in the financial and banking industry for about 12 years. To the bank, managing products still, and that's from consumer products to lending products. Yeah, and that's where my passion lies. I like solving financial problems, and it's the same thing that we do here at Workpay, other than what we're known for, which is payroll. We also have a subset of products that go ahead to help people make better financial decisions, but more so give them access to progress, to progress their lives financially in a sustainable manner. I think that's pretty much it from my end, Tony.
Right, thank you, Linus and Brian. Now over to you, Linus. You're going to help us understand, is somebody rich or are they just earning more?
We jump right into it. So a very interesting study was done by some guys in the United States. So they based most of this study in the United States, and they were comparing people in the what we could call informal sector, maybe the business people and the like. Then they were comparing those against people in the professional space, and especially they took out the top 5 career paths. They had doctors, they had engineers, they had lawyers, and now the general corporate people against people who were actually in the business world or in the informal sector. And they realized that 2 people of the same age having almost an equivalent amount of income, in this case they were comparing doctors to businessmen, 2 people, same age, same income over time, from either business or from employment, they had different wealth status or wealth levels. And to be precise, when they did an average for people who were about between 45 and 50 years, they noted that they will have an average income of around 150,000 a year, but the wealth for the people who were employed was about $238,000, and the people who were in the business sector, their wealth was about $1.1 million. That was almost like 4 times more. Why? Because so they started looking for really what's the reason that two people same age earning the same actually have different wealth output. So just to start this off, wealth and income are two different things. Think of income as a river or as a flow, whereas wealth is an accumulation of the proceeds of the flow. For example, look at two people who have a plot of land that is touching the river. One will decide to just let the river flow, while the other will decide to tap inside the river and actually irrigate. And from the irrigation, they can be able to grow crop, and that crop can ultimately turn into cash, maybe through trade. So same case to our income. Think of our income as a river, as a flow. What you do from that flow determines on how much you grow from a wealth perspective. For example, I am earning, you're earning, but what we do with the proceeds of our earning determines how our wealth will look like. And so from the studies that was done in the US, back to my example, they realized that people can be classified into three categories. The category number one, that you are maybe an accumulator of wealth. A category number two is that you are an average accumulator, and a category number three is that you are above what your target will be. So how are they able to measure this? The result of that study is what wrote the book called The Millionaire Next Door. And in that book, they discuss a particular formula that is able to identify where you lie between those three categories of people. So, and I just want you to just get your calculator out, and let's do some little exercise. We'll use this formula right there presented, that age times your annual income divided by 10. That is where you actually ought to be, your age. So if you have your calculator ready, you can take your calculator, get your age, multiply your age with your annual income. Once you multiply your age with your annual income, divide by 10. So let's say, for example, there is you are 30 years old, you earn about 200,000 a month, so about 200,000 multiplied by 12, that's about 2.4 million. Then divide that by 10. You'll see the value of your the value of your wealth. That will be around 7.5 or thereabout, if I'm not wrong. So 7.5 million is your target net worth at the age of 30, depending on your income, depending on your age. Then another quick exercise. Now you evaluate yourself against that particular target. If I should be worth about 7.5 million, how much am I worth right now? And that is the first formula here, where you're looking at your net worth. Your net worth is equals to your asset less your liability. So comparing your current asset less your liability, and then you compare that against your current age. Are you, number one, below your target? Number two, are you on target? And number three, are you above your target? If you can be able to answer that question, it starts from there. That is where the journey to your wealth creation or to growing your income actually begins, by being able to do an assessment, an honest assessment to yourself. Where am I right now, and where do I actually ought to be at this particular point in time? So if you are below there, if you are below that average, then you just earn a lot. You are not yet wealthy. You are not yet rich. But if you're above that line, then by your age, then definitely you're rich. If you can be able to actually show, or you can be able to actually measure fully that my age times my annual income divided by 10 is my benchmark, and my assets, total assets less my total liability, is my net worth. how am I doing about around that? So yes, there is that distinction between whether I am actually rich or whether do I actually earn a lot. Doctors from that studies showed to earn a lot, but how much they accumulated from what they earned is what made the difference between them and the business people. The business people tended to earn more. And all of this is because of the systems that they had built around themselves. All this because of the behavior. All this is because of understanding how to deploy, how to accumulate and to deploy what they have actually been able to raise over time. So several things that were seen from these people, especially from the business community, that actually made them to be 4 times better, even though their earnings is the same, that made them to be four times better, is they understood the engine, the 4 engines around wealth creation. The first one being able to manage their income. So they have an income, which is the first engine around wealth creation. And then there is savings, then there is the return, and then there is time. I just want to take just one, which is savings. It is just on the same slide. On the savings, for you to actually be able to make progress, studies have actually shown that you need to save at least 20% of whatever income that comes to you. Once you're able to bring in at least about 20% into savings of all your income, then you're starting to make like positive steps towards actually becoming rich. So such that now you are not only just earning a lot, but you are making what you're earning being transformed into an accumulation of wealth. And the first step that each one of us must be able to recognize is a savings. So what is my current savings rate against my 20? So you will take, for example, your last month paycheck. This is around that period where everyone has been paid. Probably you have already spent. How much have you been able to save out of that which you have you have earned? Have you saved a lot, or have you met the 20% threshold? Secondly, building an emergency fund, and thirdly, you walk towards your freedom, and your freedom is where your passive income is greater than your expenses. So yeah, back to you, Anthony.
Thank you so much. You have left me with a lot of questions after doing the exercise, a series and accumulator of wealth. And I think most of the time we don't usually work with a target, or we don't know what the target is. So there's no benchmark into savings or investing, but that's such a nice tool to be able to know where you should be at in life in terms of your wealth journey. I'd run up a poll. If you have seen it, some people have voted. If you haven't seen it, kindly vote. So the question is, thinking about your last paycheck, what did you do most with it? So if it's your July salary, for those who are yet to be paid, if it's August, what did you do with most of your salary? Currently, 53% are saying a little bit of everything. Then we have the second most people have voted that they took care of everyday needs. Then the third, which is interesting, they paid off debt or commitments. A wise man once said that every time you borrow money, you're robbing yourself your future. I don't know if it's true. So Brian is here to help us debunk that. Responsible borrowing, is it a concept?
Maybe even before I start, I want to thank Linus for the tools. When it comes to debt, there are a couple of things that the people have to, especially after that first calculator effect. Yeah, the truth is, the first thing that gets into people is the fear. I'm missing out. Hey, how do I catch up? I'm late. And even as I get into it, the essence is, kick out that mindset first, even before we continue this conversation. Because such a mindset are the things that make people make rash decisions. And you get to lose out on the impact thereafter. I fall back to biblical wisdom when it comes to money, and Solomon said in Ecclesiastes that money answers everything. So in essence, money was meant to answer, not to come and then you have the question. And it's the same attitude that you should have, especially when it comes to borrowing. In essence, know the purpose before the money comes, or before you ask for the money. In the initial conversation that we've had, you now have an understanding of where you stand, and ideally you've also had that internal goal that I want to be wealthy, but not really how to get there. Borrowing is one way of getting there, but it needs to be with direction and not out of reaction. So I want to say something clearly. Borrowing isn't and has never been the problem. So most of us walk into a conversation about debt feeling a bit guilty about it. Like having a loan means we did something wrong with our money. So I just want to push back on that right away. Credit is a tool. It's neither good nor bad on its own. It's a tool. What matters is why you're using it and how you're using it. So let's maybe just you, for example, I'm sure some of you have debt. You may have a car loan or a circle loan. And so the question, is that a red flag? Not necessarily. So if the car is what gets you from one place to the other, or to get you to your job, you still would have gone to work. The car gives you more access, easy access, you're able to do whatever you need to do. So the loan is doing exactly what it was supposed to do. So the question really is, should I ever borrow? The real question is more towards, what am I going to spend it for? And the three questions that are most prudent to have before you go into any loan, and it's also based off of everything else that I'll speak upon. One is, what is purpose? What's the credit actually for? So do I need it for opportunity or needs, or is it for consumer purposes? So in this case, you're looking at a situation where the definition of needs would be necessity. So I have a medical bill or school fees. That's potentially a good way that's a good basis of taking a loan. Opportunity would be things like capital for a business, or a car that gets you from one place to another, or something that is supposed to be able to create more capital, more expendable income. But anything other than something where it's out of your hands, but you, in relation to like a necessity, like bills or school fees, and you're out of sorts, that's acceptable. But when it's to cover a gap because you overspent, so last month you overspent whatever you needed to spend on, and then you take a loan to cover that gap, then that's potentially already a red flag for you. So ideally at that point, the question that you should always ask is, what am I using for? And if you cannot answer it in one sentence, then that's already useful information for you that you should not get into it. The second one is around cost. So what's the real cost once interest is added up? Every time we always look at, can I afford the monthly repayment? So I've taken a loan of 1 million for X and Y months, then my repayment is now at 50K. I have an earning of 150. Yeah. in essence, you look at the 50K against your net of 150, and it may seem affordable to you, but have you actually looked at the cost throughout the period of the loan? And does that then meet your ratio appropriately? Because the one thing that you should always consider is, I'll use the case of a car. You can choose to buy a car in a year, or you can choose to buy it over 5 years. And the longer you pay back, the more you pay back in interest. So a tool that you're supposed to have spent, for example, 1 million on, at the end of 5 years, you'd have paid 2.5 million. So your cost was 1.5, meaning if you chose a different tool to buy that car, you'd have bought 2 cars and an Alto. Yeah. So that's the other way to look at it, even before you get into the loan. What is actually the cost of what it is that you're spending that money for? And then lastly, the exit. So do I have a plan and a date, or am I hoping that the future will figure it out? Often than not, because if you choose to look at the cost from a monthly point of view, you choose to go into it with a hope and a prayer that at least I can afford 50K. Hopefully at the end of the year, I'll get a bonus, or hopefully I'll get a rise, and then I'll have more expendable income. That is not a plan. That is actually just suicide. At the end of the day, as long as you have the data sets that you need at this point before you get into the loan, you need to have already figured out what's the end date, an end date that you can actually say out loud, not just a repayment schedule buried in a statement. So that's the third thing that you should always consider before you get into any loan. Otherwise, the urgency would always be there to get into a loan. The comfortability of having additional money, as long as you have not answered the reason why you're looking for that money, you have considered the cost of getting that money, and also when you're going to pay it back and how, then the definite answer is do not get into that loan. Otherwise, you're just going to get up into a cycle of pressure. I'll give an example. My friend recently told me, unfortunately, it's a real story. She's a teacher at a primary school, and a young teacher joined, I think, slightly over 26 years of age. So he joins, he's a good teacher, he quickly picks up things, and the stability in his life, unfortunately, then, with the pressure of life and seeing all of his other friends progressing, he felt delayed. So he got introduced to Aviator. And because he had a stable income coming every month, he went to KCB and he got a loan and put the loan into Aviator and started small. And he kept going and kept going. And within no time, he had 3 million in debt. And the bank soon calls the principal and comes, and the principal is like, oh, okay. And unfortunately, that's the day he didn't show up to work. And my friend goes all the way home to look for him. And unfortunately, he walks in to find a man hanging on the road. So the words of wisdom still stand when it comes to Solomon, that when it comes to wealth, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Anything that you borrow will always leave you in personal sovereignty. It locks you into a period. So as long as you did not think of the reason, the cost, and how you're going to exit, then ideally, then you are the one who's going to be a servant to the loan, and not in control of the loan, and you'd rather always be the latter. Back to you, Tony.
Thank you so much, Brian. Something that really stood out with me is direction, not reaction, when it comes to loans, and also the story that you really gave. That's quite powerful. I have a follow-up question for you, but before you answer, I have a rhetorical question for our audience. Just be honest, what was the last loan that you took? Was it for an asset or an opportunity, a genuine emergency, covering the month, paying off another loan? I want you to just ask yourself, what's the last loan that you took? What was it mainly for? My other question, Brian, is according to the FinAccess data, the survey they did in 2024, they show that loan defaults went from about 11 to 17% in just 3 years. From what you see, where you have sat or where you sit, what's the first thing that usually goes wrong? Is it the amount or the reason?
Often not is the reason. The reason I say that again, the first one was not. Then it doesn't matter about you can have billion in debt, but because it was going to revenue generated to as a revenue generating, then it works out. You can also take down, and it starts becoming the snowballing effect where you didn't consider the cost of the loan, and then now you start to increase. So you always, it continues to slowly bite into your income. So let's say you're always borrowing to repay this one, and you have not considered the interest, so it starts to snowball. So for me, reason is always the answer and not the amount.
Thank you so much for that. So it seems like borrowing well is a decision, and what you do every single payday is where the real damage or the real growth happens. Linus, you have a set of habits for exactly that, and I believe you're going to show us why a boring small decision beats a brilliant big one. Go ahead.
Right. So talking about wealth creation, number one, and I think this is something that revolutionized my way of thinking. Number one, that wealth grows and survives in systems. If there are no certain systems in place, number one, in terms of how to actually build wealth, and secondly, in terms of how to protect what you have built, if there are no systems that are around that, then whatever you do cannot ultimately transition to the wealth that you have been hoping to achieve. Over lunch hour, we were just discussing with a couple of friends of mine, and we were talking about how the Indian community actually builds successful businesses over time, and how they are able to actually build wealth, not only building businesses, but also building wealth. Then we discovered that they have a system that they have built within themselves, that every family has a family trust, or it has a trust. Number one, trusts, they have some special tax advantages, so they can be able to evade, or not to evade, but to plan around their taxes. So what they do, for everyone who is earning, they contribute to the trust, and that trust maybe is put into an investment solutions or something like that. And anyone who wants capital to build a business or to invest in their studies or to do a different type of investment, they will not go and borrow outside. They will first of all utilize what is within the trust, and only when that which is within the trust is not sufficient, then they will go to alternative financial services solutions to be able to build that in. So based off of that, we realize that most of these people can have access to better patient capital, access to cheap capital, and access to networks that help them to build businesses and ultimately convert that into wealth. So every of those families, they have built systems that enable them to actually build wealth over time. And that becomes a blueprint. Everyone that actually builds wealth, they do not land into wealth by fluke. What happens is that they have a system that governs their wealth creation over time. So what are some of the boring and boring habits that actually beat a brilliant bet? Before we actually look at the habits, we need to look at the wealth creation engine, like how do we actually build wealth? And then from each and every of that component, there is a behavior that actually controls that component. So there are 4 or 5 things that actually contribute to how much wealth that you're going to create. Number 1 is, of course, the income engine, how much you are earning, be it from salary, be it from business, but how much are you able to earn? That earning engine has its own components. Then there is the savings engine. Once you earn, you move that into savings. What you save, you have to convert it or to deploy. The savings become your capital, which you deploy to various investment opportunities. So you have earned, from the earnings, you have paid yourself. So you'll start by paying yourself. Whatever is left off of paying yourself, you have saved. Once your savings are sufficient to some extent, then you can be able to deploy those savings into a return generating assets. And so that's the third engine, the returns. Then the fourth and very powerful engine is the engine called time. And fifth is the decision quality. If you can look at the wealth equation that is labeled there, you can see that everything there is multiplication, not addition. Because when one of those fails and gets to 0, everything else in that equation lands up at 0. For example, from the story that Brian has shared, the issue was the decision quality. So if your decision quality comes to 0, then your wealth automatically reduces to 0. If where you're saving the returns, there is no return, it's 0, then definitely the entire of your wealth goes to 0. If you're earning and you have not prioritized your saving, your earning ends, and you have not prioritized savings or investments, then the entire of your wealth equation turns up to 0. So look at that equation keenly, and you look at each and every of that component of the wealth engine actually has a behavior that regulates it, and it has its own magic and its own power that have the capacity to build you off into wealth. Let me show you something as I attempt to answer the question. I'll share something, so just allow me to share. I want to share something here. So one day, I was just doing some research, and I came to identify what is Bumi Kenya, the special assets, and I did some research around them, and I have been reading around them. I hope you can be able to see my numbers. Let me just increase this. So this is just an example that I just want to walk us through. So one of these special funds, or all of these special funds that are in our market, I'm not here to advertise them, I'm just using them as an example. These investment, these special funds, they will give you a rate from investment of about 18% after you have deducted your fees and their fees and withholding tax and whatever that is needed there. They will give you on average an 18% return. So take this example, and I just want you to see the power of time. Say one of these says that the minimum capital that you need to invest is maybe about 500,000. Others have 250, others have 100, depending. So just take 500,000 as an example, and they are offering you 18%. In year one, that will most likely give you the 18% of 500,000 will translate to about 90,000. So at the end of that year, you're going to have about 590,000. Then over time, you do not actually withdraw that money and you let it keep accumulating and building on top of it. So it is that slow at first. In the first year, you're going to earn 90,000 shillings from your 500,000. But as you keep going and as you keep letting that wealth accumulate, that value becomes significant. It continues to increase. And as it continues to increase, as time passes by, how much it builds, it's more than what it did in the previous year, even though at the same rate. So I just took this example of about 30 years. And the reason why I took 30 years, I estimated probably most of our age will be probably around 30 years. So if you were to invest for your retirement, for example, just as a simple example, and you put in 500,000 today, do nothing, it will begin to build wealth. And in 30 years, that simple value without adding anything will turn out to be 71 million if that 18% is sustained consistently. Of course, there are days that the market will go either way, either outperform or go below. But on average, if they are able to keep 18% and you never withdraw from that fund, it will end up at 71 million. This is what I want you to see. As it started off, it was just making slightly less than 100,000, around 100,000. But as it continued to grow, will get to a place it's making 1 million in a year, 2 million in a year, 4 million in a year. And when it is at age 30, it's actually bringing in you 10 million in a year. It looks unrealistic, yes, but it is the power of compounding. It is the power of time. So the person that actually starts early gets the benefit of building wealth over time. So the reason why I landed at this, I am married. By the grace of God, we are blessed with 2 children. My son is 4 years old and my daughter is about 5 months. So I was listening and I thought that probably when it comes to their time to move to campus, there will be no help. We have seen how that has progressed over time. Probably there will be no help. And maybe at that point, education will be very expensive. Do I actually need to wait for them to actually get to campus 20 years from now to be able to afford their campus? Or there is a decision that I can actually make right now, today, that will secure their campus education. So if I went ahead and took out 2 funds, one for my firstborn and another one for my secondborn, and do rather than the savings you made and the investments that you have made personally, there are certain investments that you can make based on the network that you have. There are deals that can be introduced to you based on the network. So being deliberate around building networks and networks that can actually bring value to your desk. So investing more in your human capital, in yourself, in studies, in polishing yourself, and secondly, being able to build that network that can ultimately then transition into a business that will keep helping you earn even more. So that's my take on that.
Thank you so much.
I don't think I will add anything else to that, but I think still the 3 questions will still place. And the most important one is the first one. Because your question was after setting up savings and investments, and you're now at the level of growing your earnings. To what end? So the more the answer to that question, then everything else becomes clearer.
All right. Thank you, Linus and Brian. We also had another question. Is the savings target you're talking about 20%? Is it net or gross? I think that was you, Linus.
All right. That I had from the parts of this special message that will give you 21 votes. No, the exact that is 18%. That's after the deduction of maybe fees they have and withholding tax if there is any. So yeah, the example I used was mostly on net.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for the audience for engaging us. I think my parting shot is I'll remind you about the two numbers that I mentioned at the beginning. 85% of Kenyans have access to financial services, but only 8% are financially healthy. The difference between those two numbers is not information. Everyone on this call has the information than you did an hour ago. Now, the difference is what you do on your next payday. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for your time and engagement. Have a blessed evening.